Introducing a new voice for a new market. Featuring some of crypto's biggest stories. Exploring the humanity on the blockchain. BlockCentral's Not a Podcast. Powered by Stasis Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to BlockCentral's Not a Podcast.
My name is Michael, and I'm your resident bear.
And my name is Patrick, and I'm your resident bull.
Together, we'll meet in the middle to discuss some of crypto's biggest stories and emerging trends.
Meeting in the middle at Block Central.
I think they get it.
Let's get the show started. All right, here we are, Michael. Our first episode of BlockCentral's Not a Podcast. Are you excited?
I am very excited. I'm excited at the line of guests that we have. I'm excited about what we have coming up. It's gonna be a great couple episodes to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, we've been planning this for quite a while. We finally got everything put together. And in honor of our first episode, we have a very special guest coming up. None other than Steven, the calculator guy.
I was very excited about our first guest. It's a kindred spirit for me, someone who loves spreadsheets as much as I do.
I don't think I have met anyone who loves spreadsheets as much as you do. And then we sat down to talk to Steven, and I feel like I could have just turned my camera off, walked away, made a sandwich, because you two probably could have talked forever about anything to do with spreadsheets and calculators.
Well, you know, it's a nice way to organize your life, organize your finances, and do anything. They're just wonderful in every way.
Yeah, I understand. The OCD, it needs to be pleased.
Yes.
And the fact that you could have two people come together and talk about it, it's just wonderful. But we go through his entire history. We go through his evolving hobbies and his life that led him to DeFi, led him to being known as the basically godfather of yield farming, and we get into that conversation.
Yeah, it's always nice to get a peek behind the people that are involved in the space and kind of learn about their motivations, their path, their journey, and just kind of see how they got to where they're at.
Yep. All right. Well, without further ado, I say we get this episode started.
Let's dive in.
Thank you for joining us. Today we have the very special honor of having Steven, the calculator guy, to join us on this episode, our first episode of BlockCentral's Not a Podcast. And I would like to welcome Michael, my co-host, who is our resident bear. My name is Patrick. I am your resident bull. And today we are joined by Steven, the calculator guy. Steven, how are you doing today?
Great, and I guess, historically I've been the resident Delta neutral guy, so it's a great fit for me to be between you two.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
That's great. Actually, there's two things I wanted to point out. I have Tiger Woods behind me in honor of the British Open that is going on this weekend. Obviously, this is going to air afterwards, but I figured why not honor the golf gods by making sure that we have Tiger in the background. And also, I grew this nice, sad beard just because I wanted to have some facial hair to match the greatness that is yours. How long have you been growing this beard?
I mean, they're almost the same. Great work over there.
Yeah.
No, it's impressive. You can grow your beard like last time I saw you were babyface.
Yeah.
This is probably roughly a year, I think. I trimmed it like once to go to do something professional. And then it just, keep growing it. So this is probably around a year, I think.
Do you do anything for that? Like, what's the maintenance on something like that?
Okay, so every morning, if you want to grow, you just look in the mirror and go for like 5 minutes and push it out. That's how you get it longer. And then everything else, the beard oils, I mostly just use beard oil. That's about it.
Okay. I've always been
I try not to comb it.
Try not to comb it. How long is this going to go for?
I don't know. I can't tell the future, but I want to be like one day be able to put something in it to hold it together, like a nice bead or something. I've never been able to do that. That's my goal.
At some point, you're just going to be able to braid it real nice.
That's right. Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, I had no idea, but
Now
apparently
it's just something that my kids can pull on.
There are international beard competitions. where you get points for styling and quality and the aesthetic of the beard.
Don't know if I'll win any of those, but hey, why not? Gotta shoot your shot.
That's awesome. So I wanted to start by obviously you're extremely well known in the space. You are the calculator guy. So I'm curious, where does that nickname come from? What's the origin of this nickname of yours?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of almost an embarrassing story. So I started off in this space investing in a potentially a Ponzi scheme called a Strong Block. So Strong Block was a place where you could go and you could purchase like 10 of these assets, give them away, effectively burn them, and then slowly you would get a trickle back of the assets. And I happened to have entered exactly at the right time. Unbeknownst to me, it's like my very first foray into DeFi back in like 2019. And I wanted to calculate sort of what my yield would be anticipated to be. So I built this really huge, gigantic spreadsheet with all these little doohickeys. You could change the future values, the past values, the APR, the amount of compounding you do, and it would spit out some projected yield or like passive income you might get from doing this. And people in the community loved it. Like they just absolutely thought it was the coolest thing. But a lot of them couldn't figure out how to use it. So I started making videos on how to create or how to use these spreadsheets. I called them calculators. And very quickly, other protocols were like, hey, that's cool. Can we have one of those too? So I built one for like Olympus DAO, a bunch of the other Ohm forks at the time. Then I started realizing tokenomics and how they exist in the space and like, oh, I should pivot. So very quickly, I started building ones that were more applicable to reasonable protocols, reasonable tokenomics, ones that just like convert things like APR to APY with different conditions of compounding. I've built probably over like 70 different calculator spreadsheets, ones for looping, leveraging, liquidation levels, to calculate emissions and different things like that. So very quickly on my YouTube, people were calling me the calculator guy because of the calculators that I was building, and I adopted that nickname, and the rest is history.
As long as you didn't give yourself the nickname, because that
Right,
might be,
you can't do that.
Has to be earned.
It's it has to be earned, and it's one of the lamest things you can do is if you give yourself a nickname. So it's good to hear.
Right.
It's good to hear. So actually, I want to go back a little bit. So on your YouTube channel, so I didn't do too much sleuthing because your YouTube channel has it. All the way back before DeFi, before crypto, you participated in some MMA fighting.
It did.
So,
yeah, that's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about your interest in that and like where it started and where it ended? Because from what I could tell, you only had a few fights, but the one that's on YouTube, you got some fast hands. You're like Bruce Lee. So I think that fight got stopped in like 15 seconds. So that was a pretty good showing that you have there.
It was a record for that specific league. But I felt bad for the guy. He was a stand-in. He was like some Taekwondo coach, probably like in his mid 40s, who was not supposed to fight me, but he was like, I want to fight when my opponent left, and I don't think he knew what he was getting into. So basically, like, I've always liked combat sports. I don't know why. I've just been drawn to them. Kind of embarrassingly, I hosted a fight club in my house when I was in, I don't know, probably like 10th grade. There was like this, we had a detached garage with an apartment above it, and we put down a wrestling mat, and I just invite my friends over, and we would just beat each other up. Me and my best friend would just like bare knuckle box for no reason, just for fun. And so always drawn to that sort of things. Then there was a gym in my town. I decided to start going to it. It was a lot of fun. I was also a wrestler, so wrestling background just sort of like fits in line with all that. Had my first fight won by rear naked choke. Had my second fight run by technical knockout. Had my third fight that was the one you saw, won by technical knockout. Fourth fight, that was a title fight for that league. Lost on points. The guy ended up going professional, so I felt good about that. Fourth fight, lost to a jiu-jitsu guy, and then I went to college.
Do you still train at all or do any fighting anymore?
No, I mean recently I did some boxing, but I'm older now, balder now. I mostly just do weightlifting and then boxing for fun. I'll do some sparring, but nothing too serious.
Cool. Now tell me how you go from MMA to calligraphy. Like how does that transition happen?
Yeah. Okay, so you saw the calligraphy stuff. So that's a lot of fun. That's one of my other hobbies that I really enjoy, but haven't got to do a lot of. So fountain pens are amazing. I love fountain pens. I think they're the coolest thing. Uh, I have. Oh, I left my backpack in North Carolina, but I have some fountain pens that are like 100 years old. One of them is like a Pelican 101N. Another one is uh, not as old, but there's like an Aurora International, which I love. It's a really cool pen. Fountain pens, they're so cool. They last for a long time, and just like the writing experience is incredibly gratifying. So like, I started doing kind of that just almost therapeutically. It's really fun, nice to do. I like writing, but I wanted to do like even better. So I got into calligraphy, which is kind of like using a fountain pen, but you can have way more precise lines, more line variation, a lot more flex. And, you know, uh, there are like four arts that every gentleman should know. One of them is calligraphy. It's like calligraphy, some form of martial arts, an instrument, and then the fourth one is philosophy, I think. So,
Okay.
I wanted to do all those. I can't play an instrument, but the other ones I try to stay up to date on.
3 out of 4 is not
That's
bad.
awesome. It's almost rebellious because now we live in a world where even I'm a writer, but 99% of my writing is done on a keyboard. So to have this hobby where you set aside where you actually get from a tactile standpoint actually sit there and write, and not only write but write in a way that's masterful and artful in a way, like I think that's actually a pretty cool, like it's almost a throwback, but it's also, like you said, therapeutic.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like the feel of the nib against the paper. You got to try it.
That's awesome. I know earlier when you were talking about calculators, I could feel Michael's excitement. He was just jazzing when he heard about widgets and equations.
Yeah, I back when I was in college was when I first started getting into spreadsheets and that whole process. And I'll never forget it. My first roommate that I had in college, I built out this super complicated multi-page model for how we should split the utilities based on usage and what times we were home and, the share of electricity that we were likely going to use. And I had comparables for it. And then I just remember him looking at me dumbfounded and just saying, can't we just split it 50-50?
That's great.
That's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about how did you get involved in crypto originally? Like where's this origin story of you? I know you mentioned strong blocks, but like at some point you had to have learned about Bitcoin and the other major altcoins at the time and started to dabble. So before you hit strong blocks, what's like this beginning phase of crypto for you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the story is semi-similar for a lot of the people in this space. Um, Most people's exposure, at least of my age, to Bitcoin was like those pop-up ads you'd get from your browser that said like Bitcoin, like buy Bitcoin. There was like these strange things, probably around 2000, I don't know, late 2000s, maybe 2010, but like didn't really touch it. Didn't do any of that crazy gambling stuff. But then I got into college, and I was getting a degree in philosophy and English. So basically, I majored in drugs. And I had some pretty sophisticated friends who were using the Silk Road to get drugs.
Yeah.
And at that time, you could do that using Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? Or Ethereum, not yet. Sorry, Ethereum was like 2014. You could do that using Bitcoin. I think actually maybe Ethereum was out, but regardless, you would see Bitcoin go from like $37. Okay, I'll buy a few Bitcoin. I can, send it to this person. They'll send me weed in like a month. That's awesome. So cool. And then the next time you're like, wait, why does it cost? Why is Bitcoin $67 now? Does this mean it's more? Like, what's going on? Am I have to pay more? Well, no, the price appreciated by 2x. And at that point, I should have seen this as an investment opportunity, but I didn't because, I was in college and drugs probably
Right.
was not conducive to my analytical skills at the time. I'm a dad now, no drugs, guys. So like that was my first interest into crypto, this sort of like decentralized world. Also, the deep web was very compelling to me. This sort of like this place where you had zero censorship. It was the wild west of the internet. That was always a compelling narrative to me. I've always been anti-censorship. I've always been like for people owning their own ideas, owning their own assets. And so, put it on the back shelf. I go off to the Middle East. I teach in Saudi Arabia. I come back. I teach at an international school. I do some tutoring stuff. Crypto starts exploding in 2017, right? This is like 2 cycles ago, and I get back into it when Ethereum's somewhere around $200. So like then it was mostly centralized exchanges. I mean, yes, Uniswap might have just launched, or yeah, Uniswap launched I think
2018.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2018, I wasn't really into DeFi at that point in time. 2017, I ride the wave up. I have a decent exit, but then bear market comes in. I back away. But I was also looking at those assets like Golem. I don't know if anyone remembers Golem at the time. I thought that would have been a really cool idea. Decentralized computing power. There were so many assets that just like completely died post 2017. Then, the beginning of DeFi summer, COVID-19 hits, but crypto assets are just going crazy. So I'm at home all day, right? Just on the internet, like looking at these things, watching these things move. Strongblock gets me into DeFi. I think, oh my God, there's just like magical printing machines here that just make money. Like they're just giving you money. And at that point, because Strongblock was doing so well, I just thought this was the way all of these worked. Anyone can come in here and just make money. Then after Strongblock started to level off, Ohm happened, and Ohm was the very same thing, right? It's this rebase token, hyperinflationary, everyone's making money. So I was just like euphoric, right? It set me up with a nice nest egg to then develop my own business. Once I realized these things are unsustainable, unfortunately, a lot of people stuck with them, and they didn't pivot. But once I understood the token economics of these protocols, I said, "Oh my God, I need to pivot, or else I'm doomed, right? Or else this income is done." So from there, content creation, I started doing all these other things. But that's what got me into crypto, I guess, in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of my friends, the entry into crypto comes in waves. Like they either got involved in 2021, 2017, or 2014. Like I got involved in 2024 or 2014, and then a lot of my other friends got involved in 2017, and then some newer friends 2021. Rarely do you hear the stories of people getting involved in those middle years when it's full blown bear market.
That's right.
I don't have anyone in my friend group who got involved in crypto in 2019. Like when Bitcoin was touching $3,200, from 20,000. And so it's always interesting to see where people come in different cycles. Like it's almost always near the top or start of the run in specific cycles. But it's always interesting for you. Did you set out to become a bit of an influencer, or is that just kind of a byproduct of the work you've been doing?
That's a great question. I'm a teacher, so like there's part of me that likes being performative. It's fun. It's fun to go out and like teach and do stuff and have an audience and interact with communities, students in my case. So I think that desire in me to teach in front of people lends itself to like being a crypto Twitter influencer or like being a YouTube personality. But that wasn't really my goal. So my goal was to make videos to monetize my sheets initially, my calculators. And I did that. I was like selling like a better version of them. But I was doing all the explanations on YouTube. And then quickly, because I got in right before the height of DeFi summer, I was just getting all of these views and thinking, okay, well, there's something here. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have a Twitter account at all, or at least the Twitter account I did, I have like one post and one follower. I was like, I'm just going to convert this into my Twitter, and I'm going to start posting about DeFi stuff. That generated a lot of momentum, and it was all organic. It wasn't planned. I didn't do like any research at all on how to become an influencer, how to get views, how to do anything. It was just me pushing out content as much as I reasonably could throughout the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, the authenticity of it is what draws people in. I know a lot of times you have people or companies that are like trying to be influencers, but people can see through that. Like they can see through the motivation. They're like, "Oh, you're just doing this to get views and get followers." Where
and then
somebody
leverage those views for some sort of monetary gain or something. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's tough in crypto, especially when it comes to influencers. It's very difficult to navigate the ethics and kind of the ethos behind that content creation. And I think the biggest problem is so often content creators within the crypto space are very predatory in terms of they're there just to collect a check to shill a project that isn't necessarily going to benefit their audience, but is adding to their own personal checking account.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll see people like DeFi Mochi, who creates some of the best Dune analytics in DeFi, in my opinion. Like great Dune dashboards, phenomenal. But about 3 times in a row, maybe it was 2 times in a row, posted content about assets that he didn't disclose he was being paid for. The first time there was a rug, totally lost credibility. Second time he did it again. Luckily there wasn't a rug, but like it was another undisclosed paid tweet, and he lost so much traction that way. So ethos is super important in this space. In fact, it's everything. The unfortunate thing about that, though, is that you can be completely anonymous. So someone who rugged you 2 months ago might be someone different under a different face now. Anonymity is like a blessing and a curse in this space for sure.
Yeah, it is very much like, it's hard because you want to be able to hold people accountable. You want to be able to trust in certain systems and certain projects. But at the same time, you're trying to balance privacy, and if people want to remain anonymous, they can. And then you get into the situation where, because of the anonymity and the disconnection through technology, like you have a lot of people who are predatory. Like you have a lot of people who are essentially just serial like scammers who try to take advantage of people over and over again. Look at, for lack of a better example, right now, you look at Brian Legend. He just did a stream today about some new token that he's launching, and he's not anonymous, but there's still a lack of accountability there. So, you know, it is very much a space that is, as much as we kind of shudder at the idea of regulation, unless we self-regulate, regulation is inevitable, right? And so, so we kind of have to like play this middle ground of like maintaining the quote unquote freedom of the space, but also try to protect people from those who take advantage of that freedom.
And so this is an amazing topic. And it's strange that like the protectors of our community, right? The protectors of DeFi are also anonymous. You have Spreek, who's fantastic. I think he's way underfollowed. So if you're not following Spreek, highly recommend him. But you also have like famously Zach, right? Zach XBT, who's just this monolithic protector of the community, goes after scammers publicly. Some of the big ones too. He's like being sued for multi-million dollars by Maki Big Brother right now.
Yeah,
and fully like he's fully funded on his lawyers now because the community just like rallied around him. Whether or not you believe he's right or wrong in the case, what it shows is his unwavering support from the DeFi community. And so these people who have good ethos are just as powerful as these people with bad ethos. But the people with bad ethos, they get killed and squashed pretty quickly because DeFi is a uniquely meritocratic space. And that is one thing that I love about this space. You know, there's no okay, let me phrase it in a positive way. Most successful people in this space are successful because of their ability to generate value for the community, whether it be through creating a great protocol, whether it be through creating good content, whether it be through not shilling and dumping on their followers. It's very difficult to stay in this place if you're a bad actor or if you are someone who can produce value. Like if your threads are bad, if your information's bad, if your tooling's bad, you're done because people are just not going to put money in your protocol. If your protocol is bad, as well, if you're not doing good security checks, like this place will shake out people who can't make it very quickly. And I think that's one of the best things about it because we end up with this funnel that leads to very, I don't consider myself like super high intelligence, but there are people in this space who I'm just mind blown by how smart they are. I used to work with a lot of Ivy League folk in a tutoring company that I worked with because I was in the Northeast, right? We're by Yale. We're sort of like close to Harvard because we had an office in Massachusetts. And, smart people. I thought like, oh my God, I was so intimidated. But now we're in DeFi and we're getting like these JPEGs who are complete degens who are coming from these institutional like players or these Ivy League schools. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like this all over again. Just we've filtered to create this really, really interesting group of people that I think are risk on to some extent, very explorative and highly intelligent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the nice thing about this space is you get those people, Harvard, Yale, Ivy League, in like advanced degrees, very intelligent. And then you also get a lot of the retail investors in DeFi are blue collar. Like they're your small business owners, your entrepreneurs, plumbers, electricians, like frontline service people. Like a lot of them, a vast majority of them are just like trying to change their financial destinies just a little bit by either buying into the meme coins or rebases looking for a lottery ticket, or they're just looking to invest in some sort of DeFi protocol or a collection of them to like be able to afford another family vacation this summer or be able to buy a new car for the family, you know. And so it's interesting because this space, because it's both pseudo anonymous and text based, because a lot of times we work in Discord and Twitter or Telegram, it levels the like social structure, you know. Like a lot of times in the real world there is a caste system. Like you have your doctors, lawyers, executives, and then you roll down to mid management, down to service, blue collar, maintenance, like landscaping. Like you have this like this loosely based caste system within our society based on your vocation, where in this space you can have somebody who has 2 degrees from Harvard interacting with somebody who's a plumber from Missouri, and that plumber from Missouri might have some insights that actually surprise the guy from Harvard with 2 degrees. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's one thing I love about this space is it gives people an opportunity to express insights without having a prejudgment on their life, their vocation, their resume, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So the number of protocols that I work with in the ventures that I have, if they're never going to ask you what your qualifications are academically. They're going to say, what have you built? What have you done? What have you contributed? And so again, this place is completely meritocratic, and merit knows no certification, right? There's a difference between being certified and being qualified. And this space elevates those who are qualified. And those could come from any single walk of life. Like, you know, there are builders, there are devs in Nigeria who have like no college degrees, who are building in this space at equal competencies as builders in like Singapore or builders in the US. And no one would know because they're anonymous JPEGs. And I love that. Like this space does not care what your background is at all, as long as you can be a value add to the community. And to me, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of professional sports, where like a lot of industries you have nepotism, you have like incestuous behavior where it's like, oh, this is my cousin's uncle's like nephew twice removed. But there's certain spaces, this being one of them, and even professional sports, where at some point you just have to kind of prove your mettle. And professional sports are that way. Like you can be anybody's son or nephew, but if you can't make it on the court or make it on the field, then you're not gonna be there. And so here it's the same thing. Is like pretty quickly people will figure out like, do you have something to offer or do you not? And if you don't, then they'll move on in short order, because in this space, because the clock never stops, because the markets never close, time is money. And so not only is in our eyes money, not only are we dealing with the tokens being money, but our time is money, because every moment there might be a new opportunity that if we get into it early enough or we take advantage of it as it launches, it could change the trajectory of our portfolio. And so like you're saying, like you have to prove to me now that you deserve to have my attention.
Yes, exactly. A space that lends itself to meritocracy is a space that will attract and produce very interesting products and individuals.
This episode of BlockCentral's Not a Podcast is brought to you by Stasis Network. Stasis Network is a DeFi protocol designed to allow users to participate in a unique DeFi fund via smart contracts. Users can hold their STS tokens or earn sustainable passive income by staking and yield farming. The DeFi fund is a professionally managed portfolio of digital assets in coordination with our partners at DeFi Logic Labs, the premier data analysis and yield optimization company in crypto. This is not financial advice, and please always do your own due diligence. You can find out more about Stasis Network on CoinMarketCap or on their website at stasis.network. Now back to the show.
let's go into a bit more of your interest in DeFi and yield farming. Like, what is it about this space? Obviously, decentralized finance is loosely modeled on TradFi, but the earning potential is significantly higher. So for you as an individual, what drew you to this idea of like yield farming and DeFi that really kind of you center most of your decision making and even your business, Define Logic Labs, like most of that is centered around this idea of yield farming. What is it that brought you to this specific niche?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was a theory of knowledge teacher, which is just a really fun job to have. It's effectively like teaching ethics and logic to students. I always said I would love to someday get paid to do math, because math is like the purest form of philosophy. It's like the purest form of any intellectual endeavor. Like you have rules, you have numbers, and you get to play with them. And as I was sort of building these spreadsheets, building these tools, and playing with these protocols, I realized, oh my God, like this is playing with numbers. This is doing math for fun, and it's monetizable. So that was my entrance into exploring DeFi protocols. And also, I had this small nest egg, and I was like, let's just see what I can do with this money. And so I would put in protocols and I would learn. Sometimes I'd get burned, sometimes I'd do really well. And so I was learning these tokenomic systems, and I was like, slowly realizing that they're more and more complex than what you're seeing on the UI, right? So what does it mean to be inflationary? What is a vesting period? What are VE tokens? How do these things work? What does it mean to have like a deposit fee and withdrawal fee? How do those impact your ROI? So all of these things were not philosophical questions. All of these things were quantifiable questions that with a little bit of math you could figure out. And people hadn't done that yet. So like this excited me because it was a problem that I could solve. And then, so like it gets me interested, and then doing the solving would be fun. And the more I did this, the more I got involved in the space, the more contacts I made, the more I realized that this could be something that I could do full time. Getting to nerd out about money and numbers and with smart people is like a dream come true. It's a job that I couldn't have wished for if I wanted to. And at the same time, like what about yield farming specifically? It's this two-sided thing of one wanting to communicate to other people why this is so cool, and two, wanting to do it in a way that allows them to make risk-adjusted decisions, because if you come into yield farming right now, you'll probably make a lot of the same mistakes I did, right? I have paid a doctorate degree worth of tuition for this space. And I think a lot of us have, whether it was investing in Ponzi's, or whether it was investing in hyperinflationary tokens, whether it was like LPing a farm token thinking, hey, that says 2000 APR, that's got to be better than like 10% APR in Bitcoin. Let me put the LP in there, and then realizing quickly the reason why the APR is so high is because it's inflationary. Like dealing with all of these things is something that other people should be aware of and be made aware of. So I get to be a teacher, I get to be a nerd, and I get to talk to cool people. So it's a very attractive place to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think. Well, there is a part of that in TradFi there isn't this concept of community. Obviously, every once in a while they'll have investor events. Like when I lived in Omaha during grad school, there was always the shareholders meeting for Berkshire Hathaway, and everybody would show, anyone who had a Series A stock would be able to come, and that stock, like one of those stocks is like $60,000 at that time. Yeah. And so they would come. There's like the giant furniture store. You get to hang out with Warren Buffett. Like there's that type of community. But for the most part in TradFi, you don't have this community aspect. It's very agnostic. It's just based on the numbers. It's the yields are low, but they're safe because either they're insured or it's an industry that's been around for 70 years. And so the interesting thing about crypto is that it is extremely social, to the point where people will judge an instrument, a product, a protocol, based on the activity of their community, which I think is it's an interesting concept. I think it's a bit of a misnomer. I don't think necessarily that one needs to impact the other, but it is something that's unique to this space, where suddenly you have this entire social dynamic that I think is a double-edged sword, where it can help propel a protocol forward, but also due to mob mentality, you can tear down a good protocol very quickly just by a couple bad decisions that lose trust in a core group of people. So have you seen
Yes.
that play out when it comes to protocols?
Yes, many times. I don't wanna put down any protocols, but there have been a number of protocols, and I'll tell you sort of like what their downfall was. One protocol had this really good novel idea. They were launching a fork of some great immutable code on another chain. Not going to say which one. And their Discord communication was so aggressive and so dismissive to their community that just by having poor people skills, the project became dead in the water. They had to rebrand, they had to relaunch. Right. That was one example. Other ones are, we experienced an exploit, bad communication. Okay, maybe they can claw back some if they do a redemption plan. Another exploit, bad communication. Like series of those, you just lose faith so quickly. Another one, you have this launch, and if the launch does not go off the way that the community anticipated, that's just a recipe for disaster. You lose so much ethos, and losing ethos is way easier than gaining ethos.
Yeah.
So, big things, miscommunication, bad, what's the word for it? It's not like PR, but it's like community communicators.
I call it
Community
investor
managers, maybe.
relations. I
Investor
call
relations, exactly.
I call it investor relations. Anything where you're interacting with the community directly is investor relations. And so there's reasons why corporations have entire departments dedicated both to public relations and investor relations. And so I think more of that should be coming into this space, because a lot of the times I see what you're saying is I see a lot of dismissive language. I see a lot of sarcasm. And at the end of the day, you also don't know, are you dealing with somebody's alt account on Discord or Telegram? Are you dealing with somebody who's just disgruntled, or somebody who's just a troll who has they don't care about anything. They just want to see the world burn. And then you're trying to approach them from a professional, PR centric point of view, and they're literally just there to tear it down. And so you are sometimes at a disadvantage because you never really know who you're interacting with or what their entire intention is. So you're always kind of playing in the dark when it comes to that. But as a team, you always have to assume that they mean well and then wait for them to prove that they don't. But if you assume that they don't mean well right away, then you end up undermining your own entire effort.
Yeah, I think communication in the space is drastically undervalued. And I think part of that probably stems from the bulk of investors, especially I think when you get into DeFi and interacting with protocols, a lot of people have been burned so many times. So the second they pick up on any sort of lack of communication or aggression from the protocol that they're in, it just, I think a switch instantly flips and they become
they get
disenfranchised.
super aggressive. They need to know the answer really quickly. They need something to soothe that fight or flight response, because they think it's a binary bet. Either this is going to get sorted out or my investment's going to zero. That's their immediate reaction because it's happened so many times. So I think it's a really good point.
I call it PDSD, post DeFi stress disorder, because you see it a lot. There's so many people, even within our own protocol, there's a lot of people who they'll come in and ask questions, and you can feel the trauma. You
know where it's coming from. Yeah.
You know where it's coming from, and you just kind of have to prove them otherwise, but you can feel the trauma that they've experienced in several protocols before they came along yours.
Yep.
And so
the good thing is it's raising the bar across across the playing field, because every protocol is now dealing with this PTSD community, and they have to prove their value to this very wounded and very stressed out, traumatized group of investors.
Well, the nice thing about these cycles is it makes the ones that stick around that much smarter. So every time, every cycle that people go through, they learn, they hopefully adapt. And unfortunately, every cycle also proves that there's plenty of people who are willing to activate that greed gene and jump into rebases and jump into HYIPs, whatever form an HYIP becomes. This past cycle, it was rebases. Before it was BitConnect, and before that it was something else. But there's always a group of those people, but the hope is that every cycle people go through, they get smarter. And smarter investors are never a bad thing for the space, but you have to prove more. Like you could start anything, like any rebase protocol in 2021 or 2022, early 2022, with an anonymous team and raise $1 million to $3 million. Like you could have done that.
Yeah.
Where you can have
Try doing that now.
Yeah, try doing that now. Like even our protocol, Stasis Network, like we did, in my opinion, we did everything right. We were a docs team, established company. Everything was completed from documentation, marketing, everything, and we still, a little less than $1 million, but it's still built on a foundation that is strong and sustainable. Mm-hmm. But if we take that same execution and we put it in February 2022, we probably raised $5 million. And so it's just something that the market dictates that they either aren't interested in investing right now, or they have much higher standards. In my opinion, the much higher standards part is the best part of every bear market.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we'll forget about it in 6 months.
In the next bull market, but go ahead.
We'll forget about it in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Short memory.
Yeah, DeFi does also have a very short memory. Short attention span as well.
So my question for you is within the space, we're always looking ahead. Like what's coming? Do you see any trends within DeFi or within crypto in general? Any concepts that you see are being explored that really pique your interest? Like this might be like the next type of yield farming. This might be the next type of liquidity pool. Is there something or a couple things that you've seen being worked on right now that could in the next 6-9 months really kind of explode in popularity?
Yes. The obvious one is like treasuries, right? USTs. So if those come on chain in a meaningful way, are onboarded in a way that people feel confident that they're backed by actual US treasuries and that they are able to redeem them either through like very deep liquidity, institutional partners, whatever it might be, that's going to explode. Because then you have this sort of risk-free yield rate or risk-free interest rate or perceived risk-free interest rate on like a fiat-denominated instrument. And bringing that into like a CDP protocol where you can mint stables against it with no interest rate, and then leverage that up to some meaningful degree, like that is a clear direction that DeFi would go. That's a DeFi product all day long. Other CDP protocols that exist, you have like your Gravitas, your Libras, your what's the other one that's really popular now? The one coming out, Prisma, your Liquidities, all of these like have gotten a recent narrative because of LSDFi. LSDFi is another one that I think is a narrative that's getting pretty big now, or is pretty big now, that's going to continue because more derivatives are going to be built on top of this sort of idea of the base yield of ETH being leveraged in some meaningful way. So
can you explain
I think
those
collateral is
acronyms?
going to get more. Go ahead.
I said, can you explain those
sure.
acronyms, what those are for people in case they might not know what those are?
Sure. So LSD, not lysergic, whatever, but LSD is liquid stake derivative, right? So a liquid stake derivative or liquid stake token. LST is the TradFi term for it now because they're trying to appeal more to the broader market. So LSTs or LSDs are basically a liquid form of a staked token. So when you stake your ETH on Lido, as an example, you'll get staked ETH, STETH, STETH. And STETH is an LST. It's a liquid staked asset. You can go and you can sell that token if you want to for ETH or for whatever else, USDC. But in the meantime, that token that token's a rebasing token. So you get more of that token every day, right? At an interest rate of roughly 4%. So after a year, you'll have 4% more of the STETH than you did at the beginning of the year. You can also get wrapped STETH, WSTETH, which will intrinsically grow in value. So these are the other type of LSTs. You have the intrinsically growing ones, which is the most common now, and then you had the rebasing ones like STETH, which are more common sort of at the descent of that type of protocol. What's become interesting is utilizing these as collateral. So you have this 4% per year interest rate on ETH token, you can stick it in a collateralizing protocol, mint some stable coins against it, and go do whatever you want. It makes more sense to do that than collateralizing ETH and borrowing against it, especially since on these CDP protocols, you can mint for virtually nothing. You're not paying an interest rate because you're minting this out of thin air against your own collateral and then going and using it in DeFi. So I think LSDeFi still has a lot of room to grow. I do anticipate more protocols tokenizing exotic derivatives and those exotic derivatives becoming forms of collateral. You have these young protocols like Dolomite, which accepts really exotic collateral. And that is incredibly interesting from a DeFi degen perspective, because it means you can take things like a PT token from Pendle. So if you guys don't know about Pendle, Pendle is basically like a yield swapping protocol. You can take a yield-bearing asset, split it into its yield and the underlying asset. The PT asset is the underlying asset. The YT asset is the yield. Well, now you can take that PT asset, which has a fixed interest rate at the time you buy it. So you can, when you purchase it, if you hold it to expiry, you will definitely get some specific number interest rate. So let's say you can get a 4% fixed interest rate asset on ETH, right? A derivative that guarantees a 4% fixed interest on ETH, and take that over to Dolomite, add it as collateral, borrow ETH against it, and buy some more and leverage that up. Well, as long as the interest that you're paying on your loan is less than the fixed rate interest you're getting on Pendle, you've effectively guaranteed some certain fixed rate yield on your ETH at some future point. That to me is phenomenal. However, we have to remember that money markets or borrowing and lending platforms are the most exploited type of protocol by number. Right. By far. So even though I love these protocols and I think that exotic collateral is the future, exotic collateral makes this whole ecosystem way more composable, way more interoperable, way more interesting in so many ways. Take that with a grain of salt, because there's just so much more risk involved when you're utilizing money markets and borrowing and lending platforms. So that's the unfortunate side of that coin. Yeah. So long story short, interesting collateral. I think it's going to have a narrative. UST's on-chain going to have a massive narrative, and then LSDeFi I think is going to just grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, I think security is one of those overlooked problems in terms of what I think keeps a lot of people out of DeFi. And I think that taps in just to the larger narrative of a whole, as I know why people value crypto is for the anonymity, for the decentralization, but that is the double-edged sword in terms of when you don't have regulation, when you don't have any oversight, security exploits are a real thing, rugs and scams are a real thing. And I think that keeps a lot of bigger players out of the space, just because it's not worth it to them to take those sorts of risks in DeFi. It's interesting to now see some of the larger institutions applying for their spot ETFs and getting their toes wet in the space. And I'm really curious to see moving forward if that leads to more regulation on the space. I think today or yesterday, I think a piece of news came out that Republicans in the U.S. Congress were putting up a bill to actually regulate DeFi like a traditional bank. Whether or not that passes, probably not. But it's interesting to see the attempts now are starting to push forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the drop a ball on a hill, which way does it roll? Mm-hmm. You know, regulation right now is you don't quite know what route they're going to take. You know, you have countries that have put regulation in place that fosters an environment of innovation and clarity. But then you also have countries that put regulation in place that is restrictive beyond anything that provides real opportunity for people to either get involved or do it without feeling either utterly confused or confined to a point where it doesn't feel worth it. You know, so I think any sort of regulation right now is a precarious situation for the space, because you don't quite know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think the best regulation comes from infrastructure. Like we are able to regulate ourselves through a large loss of capital, admittedly. But, you know, we just had the multi-chain hack. I do think this is going to be one of the things that pushes us towards native to native asset bridging. And, you know, we've seen entire chains fall as a result of bridge wrapped assets. I do think we're going to be moving away from bridge wrapped assets now. We saw reserve currency protocols die because of hyperinflationary tokenomics. We don't see those anymore. We saw like Discord hacks become really, really big. People just don't click those links anymore. So we're like a very anti-fragile ecosystem and a very anti-fragile community where we get hit and we grow from it. We get better because of it. We stop making protocols that are vulnerable. We stop making infrastructure that's vulnerable. Unfortunately, bridge hacks are still the number one cause of loss of capital in DeFi. That's also by a mile. And we do need to find a solution to that. IBC has a solution for that. That's fantastic. We do have like the Frax Ferry, which is another solution. Again, native to native assets on both chains. That has to be the future. Coinbase is doing this with USDC. So as we mature as a space and as the space becomes less exploitable, I do think that regulation will start to seem feasible. Right now, regulation would do nothing but put people in the crosshairs of the law. I don't think it would make this space better at all. I think it would just make people more push people towards more anonymity and maybe even bring in more bad actors, if anything.
Yeah. Well, we're getting to the point where we need to wrap up, but I want to ask you something that I think I'll ask every one of our guests is where do you see the market going in the next 12, 24 months? Like, what is your thoughts on what's Steven's prognostication about the market and what we're heading into over the next year, 2 years?
Up, down, or sideways? No, so like that's a great question. Next 2 years, I have to admit, full disclosure, I have historically been a delta neutral guy. So I made my name learning how to hedge everything and making tons of content on how to do delta neutral strategies. At this point, I would say 90% of my portfolio is long exposed towards whether it be Ethereum, which is, I think, probably the vast majority of my portfolio, or a few other long bets. I have Pendle, I have Stater. I do think that we are in the maybe 2/3 along the way of an accumulation phase, and that with the next Bitcoin halving, with maybe we'll get some quantitative easing, who knows, with sort of there are narratives growing, maybe with UST bills coming on, that could also be a catalyst. We have had some semi-bullish news with the XRP legislation, but none of that really matters. There is going to be something that triggers the next market cycle. I think that something is more likely to be bullish than it is to be bearish, and so yeah, I am positive for the next 2 years. Whether we crab for a little bit in this accumulation phase, I think after that crab market, it goes up rather than down.
Yeah, I think when the Binance Coinbase 2-hitter, like back to back, didn't do anything to the price of Bitcoin, like it stayed right at 25 and didn't move. I think when that happened, that was a good indication to me that might be at the bottom for now, because usually the news will help kick off an initial move, and usually whenever there's stablecoin FUD, now it's been 6 months, so let's talk about Tether depegging again, because we do that every 6 months. And so usually stablecoin FUD historically will indicate some sort of local bottom because we don't have anything else to talk about. and so it's stuff like that where I'm looking at it from a market standpoint, where August and September traditionally are very red for Bitcoin. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen this year, but historically speaking, we know what the trend is, so we can kind of hedge that direction. However, with the halving coming up and what we've seen with every cycle so far, until that trend breaks, we have to assume the trend will continue in some fashion. And so it'll be really interesting to see how the next 12 months goes, especially that 6 months after halving, what happens with the market, especially with how news affects the market.
Yeah, spot on.
What about you, Michael? How are you feeling? Our resident bear.
So I actually agree. I think 25 is a good metric in terms of a macro bottom for this cycle, for a lot of the same reasons. That was a pretty significant piece of news, and it still couldn't break below that level. looking back over the last year or since January of this year, 25 was a significant level in both directions, regardless, both as support and resistance. So I definitely agree that that's probably going to be our macro bottom. I'm of the belief that we'll probably either consolidate and crab sideways, maybe retrace down to the 26 to 28 range. I don't think the crypto bull run starts until the first spot ETF gets approved by the SEC, and I think that'll be the actual catalyst to kick off the crypto bull run.
Nice. I can't disagree with you. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
That's
bet
awesome.
against BlackRock ever.
That's right.
Why would you? They have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be able to get to know you a little better and hear about your origin story and how you've moved through this space. I think it's really important for people to hear that, because a lot of times with people that are well-known, key opinion leaders, KOLs that we know, people just kind of assume like they've been here a long time and they've navigated the market well. But the truth of the matter is like we've all made mistakes. We've all lost our fair share of money, especially in this space where it's an endless evolving minefield of things that you can't quite ever truly know. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, and we look forward to your work over this next 12, 18 months, which I think will be a new market cycle, and definitely seeing what your company, Define Logic Labs, is going to be doing coming up.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.